we had this guy on who was a cop in Baltimore, and I guess it was like the early 2000s he was there, and he found a piece of paper that was an arrest report from the 1970s, and it was the same arrests in the same neighborhoods for the same crimes, and it was overwhelming to him. He was like, oh my God, this is just corruption and systemic racism, and you're not going to fix this with just policing. You're not going to just arrest your way out of this.
No, I think you need to change the mindset of this younger generation. Like what's become very cool? To be bad. Oh, if you're bad, you're cool. That has to change.
Yeah.
That has to change. I remember back in the 60s, you're not old enough. I was born in the 60s. Like, being a good person was cool.
Right.
It was for a while.
Thing in front of your face. You got it by your neck now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Being a good person was what people aspired to.
Yes.
And now it's like to be a bad person is what people.
Well, that's culture. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
There's a lot of culture that has emphasized that, and it's a lot of rap music and a lot of things celebrate that sort of badass lifestyle, and and when you come from nothing, that looks incredibly attractive.
Yeah.
Like, here's a guy flashing money, he's wearing expensive sneakers,
You don't know any better.
Car.
Yeah.
Right, and those are all things that people aspire to that are very difficult to achieve. So you look at that, instead of like having a balanced life and a loving family and being a pillar of the community, you aspire instead to being this thing that's very difficult to become, which is the guy who has the big house and the fancy clothes and the money you're flashing around. And so it's just you're chasing the wrong carrot.
Yeah. No, that's it.
Yeah.
We're a broken country, and it's like if you really love your country and you want to fix it, that would be those would be the areas to attack.
Yeah. And I don't see any effort at all.
Find me a politician that's like really going to do that.
Well, they don't even talk about
They
it.
don't even talk about it.
I mean, they'll talk about social safety nets, which I think are also very important, welfare and things for poor people that are genuinely just struggling because they're down on their luck, and that we should treat them as members of our community and try to help them because we can. And that's a sign of a good, strong, healthy community, that we do look out for people that are less fortunate than us. But there's more that has to be taken into consideration, and much, much more that has to be done. Like, you have to figure out, like, how is this continuing to happen in these same places over and over and over again, and how is there no effort to try to mitigate that? Because it's a long-term thing. Like, it's the expression, you got to get better the same way you got sick.
Yeah.
And this country got sick slowly.
You're very much on the pulse of what's going on in the world and the country and technology and everything, right? Society, culture, everything. Do you think we are... what you're watching is a society in downfall, like spiraling down?
There's a lot of us. There's a lot of our society that is in downfall. There's a lot of our society that is spiraling. There's a lot of the way we think about things that is fruitless and pointless and ultimately negative. But I think there's a lot of people also that are aware of that. And there's also a distribution of information today, and the way people are having conversations today, that's totally unavailable before. Mm-hmm. Your channel is part of that. This podcast is part of that. Mm-hmm. The multitude of podcasts that are out there where intelligent, kind, compassionate people are thinking and talking about things, talking about the way you approach other human beings and talk to people, the way you live your life, the way you can put pleasure and immediate gratification aside and seek discipline and hard work, and the value and the benefit of that, the value and the benefit of treating people with kindness and developing a good core group of friends and treating each other well. I think that's spreading. I think that's helping. But I think we are constantly in this yin-yang battle as human beings. And I don't think you have darkness without light, and I don't think you have light without darkness.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think we're always going to be, we're this bizarre, flawed, intelligent, calculating entity that is trying to figure out its existence, which is ultimately finite in nature anyway. And our goals and our aspirations and our dreams, there's so much of our society that's based around chasing objects which ultimately you can't keep. And then also, if you do give them to your kids, you're probably fucking them up.
Right.
It's very, very few people that I've met that come from wealthy families aren't fucked up. Or at least, I have friends that grew up very wealthy and their family's wealthy and they're wealthy now and they know that they got there because of their family. And there's a thing about them that's always insecure.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of brag a little and tell you a little of this they've done, a little of that they've done. And I know what they're doing. And they're not bad people. They're just trying to establish that they're valuable.
No, imagine if your dad was an Elon Musk or somebody
Right.
who's so wildly successful that you can never, in your wildest dreams, you're never going to outdo your father.
Right.
What's the motivation?
This is an old expression. So show me the son of a great man who's also a great man. It's very rare. For men to aspire to be like their father. If your father was some like super conqueror type character who just is
Well,
out there.
a great man is a vague term. I mean,
Yeah, it is a great term. Vague term.
A
right?
vague term.
Vague term because it could be
Yeah,
just
my
great-
dad was a great man,
emotionally
but he was
great.
not a multimillionaire.
Right, but the thing is, like, what our society values in terms of when we look at someone who's great, we look at a Bill Gates, or we look at someone who's amassed insurmountable wealth, and that's if you're a son and you're born in that. Also, you don't have to work hard because you're kind of always going to be okay. You have an endowment, you have a fund, you have a this or that, and
How do you if you're that wealthy and successful, as I guess you and I probably are, how do you protect your kids from that?
how do you? Yeah,
I'm not going to give you anything, so now you're
Yeah.
a selfish bastard.
right.
And if you do, you're damned if you do.
Well, I try to instill in my kids the value of hard work, but also sometimes kids don't want to hear it from you.
No, they don't. Kids won't do what you say; they'll do what you do.
Right.
Like I turned into my dad. I just kind of blended a bit of my mom in as well. So I'm an artist, but I work my ass off,
Yeah.
and that combination makes me a successful artist. And I remember watching my dad work. My dad never came home from work saying, "Oh, I worked my ass off this week, and I traveled all over the Midwest, and I did this, and I did." I grew up in Chicago, in Detroit. He never talked about how hard he worked.
He just did it.
He just shut up and did it.
Yeah.
He never bragged about it. He never complained about it. It's just what he did.
Yeah.
And my best friend, Bob, and I, we joke about how we had the same dad. You know, different dads, of course, different families, but our dads are almost the same type of person. Just shut up and worked
Yeah.
and brought home the bread to support the family.